Thursday afternoon chat. Your favorite artists with Jayar.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, will you please welcome a first-timer on the show? Do we have like a button that goes off? First-timer. Ellie Holcomb. Ding, 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 ding. This is truly a first because I've had some firsts where I've done a phoner with, and it's like, that's not a real interview, so you're face-to-face with somebody. But you were at the Joy FM, and I sleep in because I do an afternoon show.
That's right.
So when somebody does something on the morning show at the Joy FM, they've already been there and left.
They're
on a plane.
That's not really ships in the night, is it? It's like planes in the
Yeah, something. Something missing each other.
But
I have been just a fan for a long time. And so it's great to finally have you on. We're going to play some new music for the humans today.
Yes.
A new song. But first, let's deal with this green blanket behind us. It's a green screen so that when people go click on moments from this interview, they'll at least have some entertainment of a backdrop.
I like that.
So you've scoured the list. What would you like to go with?
Take me to the Grand Canyon.
Okay. Do you remember Arizona? Can we play that? Well, here we go. Headed. Here we are. That's a big hole.
It's pretty massive. Yeah, it is. I like it.
I've
been here before.
Yeah. What part?
Right down there.
Did you ever do the donkey thing?
I didn't ride a mule.
Yeah.
I say that I camped on the northern rim and I went down into the canyon, and I say went because it sounds cooler.
Yeah.
Like I hiked down, but really I rode a helicopter down.
Yeah.
All right down there.
I know you're buddies with the Need to Breathe guys, and they are the only ones that have picked this background, so that's amazing.
That feels strong.
But Bear followed it up with a story of being at the Grand Canyon, and he's like, yeah, we almost died. And apparently they had a guide that did not know what he was doing. So they lost a guy for the entire day, and the sun was going down, and like he was going to be out there in the elements. They didn't realize that the guide had taken them up a mountain, and they were stuck up there. And Bear was like, we almost died there. And they paid for this 3-day excursion, and all of them were like, it was one of the scariest moments of their life. And we're like, why did you pick it as a backdrop?
Yeah,
that'd be a trigger for me.
They're like, we survived this.
I guess.
We survived this moment.
Like, this would be the last place I would go.
Oh my God.
That'd be like me putting middle school up here. It's like, I don't want to go back.
No, never again. Dang, I guess they left a 1-star review.
Yeah. Oof. Let's actually go straight into the new song right here.
Okay.
Can you walk us up, tell us the title and just sort of DNA behind the new song?
Absolutely. So my new song's called I Will Carry You. I love it so much. I wrote it with Ben Glover, and we got in a conversation kind of like we were hanging out before this, just talking about family, catching up on life. And in this crazy year or two now that we've had, I think it's been really hard. It's been really hard on all of us, but it's been hard on kids too. And we were talking about wanting to write a song that would help our daughters who, the rates of anxiety within young girls right now are like 1 in 4 girls right now is going to have some kind of anxiety or worry. Anyway, we just wanted to write a song that would help them know that no matter what they think of themselves, no matter what anybody else says about them, that they are beloved and they are held always by the God who made them and who will carry them through things that they feel like they can't get through. And so it was one of those songs that we started writing for them. But it ended up being, we're like singing it and we're like, we actually really need this right now. And so I stumbled when we were writing across this beautiful verse, which I'm going to pull my Bible out right here.
Could everybody please stand unless you're driving?
Yep. Okay. Take your hats off. But this verse from Isaiah 46:4, and it says, even to your old age and gray hairs, I'm he who will sustain you. I have made you and I will carry you. And so I think for me, there's so much that all of us carried this last year. There's so much weight, there's heaviness. And so for me, this reminder that even with our heavy burdens that we carry, there is a God who says that he will carry us. We can lay our burdens down and he will carry us. And so I'm really excited that it's coming out in this new year. And I hope it encourages people to remember that whatever they're carrying, they can carry it to the one who's always carrying them.
We need to talk about our Need to Breathe connection here really quick because would you mind telling the story? It's on a live Need to Breathe album where Bear almost gets emotional, where he talks about you coming up to sing Stones in a Rushing Water. Yeah. And he tells the story about you and your husband running into Need to Breathe, giving them a letter at a show in Colorado where you guys were thinking about giving up on music.
Yeah.
How did that story break down, and where Need to Breathe is involved with that letter and everything?
Yeah. So we, Drew and I have been doing music for almost 8 years, and it was so hard. You know, you just like, music is a roller coaster of a job. And so we really were at the place, our car had broken down and we didn't have money to fix it. So we were like, we had to borrow a car to finish our last gigs. We were planning on quitting. We went and saw Need to Breathe play the Ryman Auditorium. Yeah. And the show was absolutely like inspiring to us. They've had a little bit non-traditional music career, kind of like we have. And they had obviously they're playing the Ryman, they were doing great, but they had never had that like major breakthrough or major label kind of like come in. And so it was an amazing night. And we just thought, we have to keep going. Like we have to keep doing music. And kind of things worked out to where we could keep going. And so Drew wrote this story down when we had just recorded a new record. So it was Chasing Someday was a record. And so we happened to be at a radio conference with them. They were headlining it. We were playing like in the morning when you were still asleep. And so we showed up we knew that they were playing that night, and Drew had a connection with their manager and had a handwritten note, like telling them the story with the record. And they read the note and they listened to the record. They started sound checking with one of our songs called Fire and Dynamite. And it turned into this incredible relationship. They ended up inviting Drew. This is like the stuff that dreams are made of. Do you know what I'm saying?
I've dreamed of touring with Need to Breathe, and they've never asked me.
All you got to do is write them a letter. Come on.
I printed it. It was on a Word doc. That was my problem.
That was your problem. Just handwrite it.
Handwrite it means more.
Out. Okay. But they asked Drew to come on tour with them, and that was the beginning of, I don't know, probably almost 5 or 6 times we've been out on the road with them. They've become dear friends and friends with their family. Our kids are kind of growing up, being on the road and out together.
This is all it takes. But the problem is my letter said, Bear, I think we could be best friends. I'm outside your house. But like, I don't, like, how far is too far?
That maybe was.
The problem is it wasn't handwritten.
It was. If you had handwritten it, I think you would have felt better.
Bear, I'm outside your house.
There would have been a connection, more of a personal connection. Yeah. So he could have known you. But it has been it's been so fun getting to make music alongside of them. And then we've sung on some of their songs. Bear and I wrote on my last record, King, and we wrote 2 songs together, and he sang on one of them, Sweeter After. It's just been an absolute blast getting to be creative alongside of them. Feels kind of like a dream. Yeah. A dream come true. Yeah. It's really fun.
I want to ask you about one of the songs. Actually, we're going to play 2 songs from last year. One was in my opinion, was just a huge song. I don't know how well it did on charts. All I know is a lot of new music comes up, and then it's in a new music category. And then if it doesn't do well, it's just kind of like, oh, that was a song that just disappears. Yeah. Other songs stick around. And right before Christmas music hit, Sycamore, Sycamore Tree. Don't want to miss a thing. Yeah. Don't want to miss a thing. It's just, I was like, this has to stay. It's just a great, great song of God's faithfulness, and I don't want to miss it. So we're gonna play that in just a second. But I want to ask you about another song that didn't get as much radio airplay, but Constellations was a song that everybody has been at that moment. If you've ever been outside, ever, the sky is so massive that it's like God's thumbprint of His power, and anybody that's ever stood under a star-filled sky has been in awe. And can't even take it in. But we've all been in, to take it a step further, we've all had dark nights of the sky is falling in and hopelessness. And you look up and that star-filled sky is going, it's not hopeless, even no matter how you feel right now. So I want to ask you the question about is there a story behind Constellations where you were in that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote that song with John Guerra and David Leonard.
From By the Tree?
From By the Tree, yeah.
6'2".
I love those guys by the tree, by the sycamore tree, actually.
That's a 2002 reference there.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
I love it. So we we're having this conversation about, we had all just been through some long seasons of sorrow and suffering, different things, and each of us. And I will never forget it. David Leonard told this story about just driving. He had a lot of loss and ended up on the West Coast with his family. His family flew back, and he decided to drive back home. And he said that he was having one of those nights, which is what we were all talking about that we've had, especially in the past couple of years, which this was pre-COVID that we wrote this song, which is crazy. But the moments where you're just going, shaking your fist at the sky, you know, speaking of the expansive sky, you're going, God, where are you? Like, do you even see me? Do you even see me, God? And he was having one of these moments. He's driving, it's just dark desert drive, probably near the Grand Canyon right here, but at night. Yeah. And he said all of a sudden he turned, there was a curve in the road, and he literally screamed at the top of his lungs, do you see me, God? And he turned the road, and it was like it was like a Truman Show moon was shining. Oh yeah. And it almost felt like a spotlight, God saying like, I see you. Yeah. I see you, and I'm with you. And it was a tear-filled conversation, just recounting the ways, because we were sort of through these harder seasons and looking back on the ways that God had been faithful. So we wrote Constellations, remembering how God had been faithful and met us in those dark nights of the soul. But what I didn't know when I wrote that song is that I would end up in the Grand Canyon here, down there. Yeah. And we rafted the river. Have you ever done this?
Oh, no.
Okay, so we rafted the river and spent the night on the riverbanks, and then rafted out.
Right there.
Right there, yeah. Okay. We went out right down there.
Yeah.
And but I will never forget our guide saying to us before we went to sleep, he was like, y'all need to make sure you wake up in the middle of the night. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But actually, as it turned out, it was just 117 degrees. Yeah. So it just was hot. So I woke up, which was great. But he said there's this thing that happens called the rim effect. And when the moon sets behind the canyon wall, you will be in the darkest place that you've ever been before, because you're over a mile into the surface of the earth, as you know, portrayed right here. Yeah. And you'll be further away from the stars than you've ever been in your life. But because it is so dark, the stars will shine brighter than they ever have before, and they will appear nearer than they ever have before. And that is exactly what happened. I woke up in the middle of the night, and those stars were like right here. And that is what I had experienced of God drawing near to me, as I kind of, via a counseling journey, visited some of the deepest wounds in my story. Yeah. I encountered the nearness and the tenderness and the empathy of God in a way that will mark me for the rest of my life. And so that song sort of captures all of that. Yeah. And it's been an amazing thing to get to sing it and hear people connect with it. And we had no idea we were headed into like the darkest years, you know, that we've had in a time. And so the song we recorded, the vocal that's on that is the first time that I'd ever sung it. Yeah. It's just the demo of the song.
Oh, it's a great raw vocal. Like, it's like, oh, she's been somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is definitely remembering, deep places of sorrow that I've been in my own story. And you can hear that. And then encountering God in those deep places. And that, to me, that's the power of the love of God. It is like water. It always moves to the lowest place, and it runs deeper than our deepest sorrow and ache. And so I think finding that kind of hope and comfort and that kind of deep sorrow has given me this like this joy that's grounded deeper than circumstance. Yeah. It's grounded in an empty grave. I mean, with Jesus, right? But it has been, and it's given me the courage to be able to sing even in a pit, even in a canyon place, which has been really beautiful.
Perfect.
Because when you sing in a canyon,
Yeah.
do you know what
Echoes?
happens? It does. No, it does. It echoes.
Yeah.
But it's echoes off of every single broken place that's around you.
Right.
And so I'm like, man, that's why God tells us to sing. Because when we sing, especially when we rejoice, always, even in those low places, our voice ends up being, like the Need to Breathe song says, it ends up being multiplied because it echoes off of every broken place, declaring the goodness of God even in the depths of pain.
Right before Christmas music hit, one of the coolest songs we got to play last year was I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. And I mean, it's very rare that we get songs with sycamore tree references. We just don't get that very often, you know? But it's got a good Southern feel to it. Sycamore tree is a reference to Zacchaeus, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Somebody had to point that out to me because I was like, oh man, she's from the South. She's referencing some kind of Southern tree, a sycamore tree. And then I was like, oh yeah, Zacchaeus,
that's
sycamore
in the
tree.
Bible. Yeah.
You know who I was thinking was from Forrest Gump, Jenny, you know?
Jenny.
Her and Forrest would always sit
that's
in this
right.
tree and talk.
That's right.
And I was like, that's what she's referencing is a big old, I was picturing some massive oak tree, but sycamore tree kept
Yeah,
in my
well,
head.
they're big too, though.
Yeah.
The sycamores are huge. I love that story from Scripture, and I love that you love that song.
Yeah.
It is that Zephaniah 3:17 that the Lord your God's mighty to save. He will quiet you with His love, and He will rejoice over you with loud singing. And to me, this earth, this world that we live in is so noisy. There's a lot of noise. And so for me, I'm like, if it's true that God is singing over every single one of us, not only just when we're crushing it and on our A game, right? But like, I love that He'll quiet you with His love. Maybe when you're like not feeling good about yourself, you totally messed up. It's like He's singing to us even in those places too. But if that's true that He's singing over every single beating human heart, I'm like, that's what I want to crank the volume up on and help everyone who ever listens to that song or whoever walks on this earth know that they are beloved by the God who made them. And I love that story, Zacchaeus, because he's this kind of shady character, right? Like he's sort of outcast, and God sees him. And to me, if somebody's singing over you, you can be certain that they see you. And so I always hope that song helps people, dance, because I feel like it's really good for us to dance here. It's like,
Prove
it's the revolt against the darkness. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is like dancing is like an act of like joy wins in the end.
Yeah.
Like love wins in the end. Love beats death. And anytime I think that's what dancing represents to me. Singing's the same way.
Yeah.
But if I could help anybody, like A, dance, and B, know that they're beloved in the middle of them acting, even when they're dancing like a fool. You know when you're a kid, like, and you're just dancing like crazy, and you look and see a parent just beaming at you, like smiling at you. Like, I do this with my kids now. That's what I want people to feel when they listen to that song. That God is like, I'm crazy about you.
Let's go with, did you grow up a PK at all? No? Okay. What was one of the perks?
Oh, I did grow up as a PK, a producer's kid.
Oh, great.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Oh my, yeah, producer's kid. That's what I meant. Wait,
My dad is Brown Bannister.
I know him.
I know him.
I know.
You sound like
Tomorrow
Buddy the Elf.
morning, 7 a.m.
Santa.
That's right. That was one of the first things I knew about you, was that as a kid growing up listening to Christian music in the 90s, and your father's name was in every CD label, or what are those called? The booklet that they used to have. Yeah. And your dad was
The
named.
lyric books.
So you knew I was on the West Coast. I was in Seattle going into the local Christian music store to buy DC Talks free at last CDs and all of that. So you got to know all these names that now, you know, the fact that I know Ed Cash, when as a kid, you're like, oh, I've seen your name every time I would save my paper route money and buy a CD or cassette.
Yes.
Those names, and your father would have been a name that I would have seen over and over.
Yeah.
You know.
It was pretty special.
That's right. I don't know how I forgot that. So let's just say between your mom or your dad, what was a perk? This is kind of an easy question because you have a music career now, but perk, let's go with an odd perk most of us wouldn't think about of one of your parents' jobs? Like my dad worked at a grocery store, so I got to run the aisles when it was closed all by myself as a kid.
Oh,
So,
yes.
so maybe something weird that's not music related, perhaps. If you
Okay. So, two things. One, the odd one is that as a kid, we got to jump on foam, like a foam pit at the gymnastics place. So Dad had all of these huge pieces of foam all over his studio for sound purposes. Yeah. And it is like having a trampoline inside of your house. That is like an epic thing to have access to as a little kid. So I would say cool. The foam isolation / trampolines, like mattresses or whatever, booths. What do you call those? Foam rectangles?
Tell me your father's in the music industry without telling me.
Yeah.
We got to play with soundproofing
stuff. Foam.
Yeah,
That's right. So so that was so much fun. I would say like the other kind of odd thing, this sounds so weird to say, but I was 0% enamored with fame.
Right.
I just was like, I just knew as a kid that that there was a cost to fame. Mm-hmm. I just saw it. I'm like, oh, you can't ever just go to a restaurant and just sit there and not anyone bother you. And so there was this very like clear-eyed, you want to know why you're doing this because you don't do it for that because that's not actually meaningful. But I got to watch like Amy Grant as a kid.
That's the name I was going to say. You probably got a front row seat.
I mean, which she's like hero to every girl of my generation. And she is still to me. I just am crazy about that woman. But I got to watch her in a signing line and watch my mom point out like, okay, watch what she does to every single person in this line. You think they're all here to see her, but she knows they're just here to really share. They want to be seen. Yeah. And so she's going to turn every single person's going to be like, Amy, I love you. And she's like, tell me about you. Yeah. And I am so grateful for that. There you are perspective that I got kind of behind the scenes of music is not about you. If you make music, it's not because you want to make yourself big. It's because it's connecting all of our stories and it brings us all together in this way that we're meant to be of belonging and celebration.
That's perfect. That's great perspective on that. Let's go. You're the only artist I've ever had in 17 years of doing interviews that has brought a Bible to the interview. So I'm going to take advantage of this. And maybe you're the wrong person to ask this because I was going to ask you, your YouVersion Bible app puts out their end of the year. Here was the most searched for scripture of the year. So they've got the data of billions of downloads of their app and who searched for what.
I love that.
So I wanted to ask you, what was your last year, 2021, what was your home run that tattooed itself to you forever?
Oh, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. I sang that with my kids because we had the tornado that hit Nashville and it went right behind our house. And so every storm, was like PTSD for them. They just started. And so I was just like, you know what? Fear is a good thing. Like there's some fear that keeps us alive. It's like, okay, we need to pay attention. There's a storm. We're going to do all the things that we need to do and let fear inform that in a good way. But we are not going to let fear have the final word. And so we started. So I wrote him a song because I've been memorizing scripture for a long time now, and it's easier for me if I sing it. And so the storm starts to rumble, and I'm like, okay, kids, let's go. And we're like, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind.
Are you on a pirate ship?
Yeah, we really are. We're like, we're at a pub. We're at a pub in Ireland, clearly, with the kids, you know. No, but it is, but they march. My 3-year-old's real passionate and he wants to be a pirate. So we sort of march around the house singing that. And I think that has been a really beautiful, like we get to choose whether fear gets to drive or joy, whether fear gets to drive or faith. And so that would probably be my verse from 2020.
Awesome. Yeah. Love the new song. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Absolutely.
One last thing, all the artists that are lead vocalists that I have on, I'm just asking for you to, with your amazing voice, to sing the Jayar show.
It's a Jayar show. It's a Jayar show. Where you gonna go? To the Jayar show. It's a Jayar show. He's got what you wanna know. It's a Jayar show.
That's great.
The Thursday Afternoon Chat. Your favorite artists with Jayar.